Breakfast. Time to talk high tech, suckling on the teat of tech, as it were, with Paul Brislen. Talking high technology. G'day there, Paul.
Back in the day.
Thanks for coming in. Yeah.
Yes, weaning it off.
Yeah,
You'll be out on your own. What will you do?
I don't know.
Without the USB cable connecting you to the world, how will you cope?
Exactly. Well, I was just saying off air that it's probably a good thing that everything's finishing today because the technology in here, it's that whole Windows thing. Once you've had it installed for 2 years, it starts grinding to a halt.
It's crufty and falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's all over.
Yeah,
it's all over.
But when we first started this feature, 2006, you were at Computer World magazine.
Yeah, that's right. I was the editor there, and you were this young fellow ringing me up out of the blue, going, "Hi,
pestering you.
I've got this radio show."
But the Microsoft operating system in effect at that stage was what?
It was
Windows
everything.
XP.
It was Windows XP, and I remember we talked a couple of times about this thing Vista that was going to launch. That was going to revolutionise everything, and in its own way, it did, didn't it?
Yeah,
because it opened up a world of possibilities for everybody else.
Frustration to the next level.
Yes, yeah. Although I have to say, in its defence, I'm still running the same install on my computer. 5 years later, and it's fine. It just ticks along. I think I'm the only one in the known universe who's never had any trouble with it. But there you go. So yeah, Windows XP. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on there, though, that seems quite bizarre to look back on.
That is, yeah. Just going back through the archives, is the treasure trove that is wammo.co.nz. Unfortunately, the first conversation I have up there dates back to April 11, 2008, so we're missing a couple of years.
A couple of years worth of quality content.
But going back then, we were talking about these things, these handheld gadgets, these things that they reckon will store thousands of hours of film footage and could soon be a reality.
That's right. It's kind of like a tricorder, I think, from Star Trek, where you can beam down and wander around with all the world's knowledge at your fingertips. And from memory, this was just after Steve Jobs had done a keynote presentation where he had a hard drive that was plugged in, playing video on one screen. He unplugged it, walked across the stage, and plugged it in at another terminal, and it carried on playing the video, and the crowd went nuts.
Wow.
And this wasn't an Apple technology. This was a company that he admired and had looked at buying. And ultimately, of course, it became the iPhone, and the iPod initially, and then the iPhone.
Yeah.
And it seems hard to think we were talking about these things before the iPhone or the iPod were really mainstream.
But Apple were doing bad things back then as well. They did a Microsoft and were bundling unwanted software into security updates.
They were, and they still do, rat bags. So every time you update iTunes, for example, if you're forced to use iTunes, you end up with, we think we'll give you Safari as well. And perhaps you might like a couple of other bits and pieces.
Annoying.
None of which I want, They made a good name for themselves by being straight to the point, simplistic and customer-centric, and then they started doing stuff like that, stuffing it up for everyone.
And it's amazing, looking back at sort of 2008 as well, it really set the scene for the next 4 years. That particular year was a big year. It was when Facebook really took off.
That's right.
People were joining worldwide in 2007, but it really started taking off in 2008, so social media was hitting its straps. And really it was a Google-Apple thing going on, right?
It was. Even back then, it was all Google versus Apple. And you could see the writing on the wall. MySpace was the big name in town. And in New Zealand, it was really MySpace versus Bebo. The kids were all on Bebo, and the grown-ups were on MySpace. And these days, I think you could swing a cat in either and not manage to hit a single other person.
Well, looking back at January 22nd, 2007, we had a conversation about a local version of MySpace launching in New Zealand. And we're going, why? Why did they need to do that?
Why do you need to do that? Well, it's because they were desperate and wondering where all their market was going, and it was all hemorrhaging, of course, to this new thing, Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think probably neither of us would have been on Twitter at that point. It could well have been pre-Twitter.
Twitter to 2008 as well.
Yeah.
But also back in 2007, Netflix in the US started streaming.
And I think that's a win for us. We talked about that before anybody had ever heard of it, and before anybody even knew what this whole online TV thing was about.
Yeah.
And I remember we talked about a number of different services. There was Duke's TV. There were a couple of other websites you could go to and just watch television, which automatically got shut down as fast as anybody could find them. But we were clearly painting the direction that all of this was going, and even today we're still having some of the same arguments about content availability. This is not a new thing. This has been going on now, as you see, for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
quite amazing.
A story also back from 2007 in March, and you just started at Vodafone at that time, and there was a story about the OECD phone cost ranking for New Zealand likely
Right.
to improve.
Right.
Did that happen?
No, it did. It did. So, from memory, back then we were just under the average, and I think we managed to get just over the average, but very barely. It was it was hard fight. And
It
now,
is
of
much
course,
better now, isn't it?
It is. And these days we've got competition. We've got 3 networks. We've got some MVNOs, the virtual guys in the offing. And it's a far more healthy market than it ever was 5 years ago.
Yeah. Looking also into April 2007, a story from, this one came from Stuff. Because Stuff would have looked quite a bit different back then as well. In fact, your story is so old
that it's vanished off the
not
website
found anymore.
Yeah. Archiving on websites is a pain in the butt because they seem to think you're only interested in this year.
Yeah.
But as we were saying, Google versus Apple, you're starting to see that really come home now. I think we've probably had 4 years of the phony war where they've been quite friendly. Sergey Brin was on the Apple board for quite some time as well during this period. But since then, the new release of iOS 6 that was announced a couple of days ago, suddenly it's all on. Google has been evicted as the mapping technology of choice. Apple's signed up and integrated Facebook quite neatly into iOS 6. So that's another blow for Google, who hate Facebook with a passion.
It really is war between them.
It really is. It's going to get very nasty soon, and we're all going to have to decide whether we're Apple fanboys or Google fanboys. So it's going to be very interesting to see just how all that pans out in the next couple of years. Meanwhile, we're looking at the death of Nokia with another 10,000 staff laid off. They don't seem to do any less than 10,000 in a batch.
Unfortunately, this whole Windows Phone 7 thing was meant to sort it out for them.
Well, that's right, and it's a shame because Microsoft was just late to the market with Windows with a phone system that worked well, and they've always been a bit late to market and managed to win, but this time I think it's probably just too late for them.
And talking about Nokia, a story back from February 2008, Nokia has created a phone that wraps around your wrist like a bracelet.
Oh, I remember that one.
That really caught on, didn't it?
That did well. Yes. We're all wearing them these days in the future. Yeah. It's a little alarming, isn't it, how much stuff comes out. I just saw a thing today about Microsoft founder Bill Gates talking about putting bracelets on all the students so that you can monitor whether or not they're engaged in their studies or just loafing about.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll see a lot of that in there.
Nanotech making windscreen wipers obsolete. I'm still using my windscreen wipers.
No. Well, my car hasn't kept up with technology either. In fact, my windscreen wipers still don't work very well on my car either.
Although, one thing that has changed, my experience in the car is being able to stream music and radio over my cell phone and plug that into the car.
And straight in.
Back a few years ago, that wasn't a reality because data costs were too high.
That's right.
And also the network wasn't.
And the network couldn't have coped. Yeah, that's right. But these days, of course, we're far more integrated, and we're starting to see. The one I'm quite keen on is a car radio that doesn't have a faceplate at all. The faceplate is your phone. You just snap the phone in and you're away.
Yeah.
Given the trouble I have connecting my phone via Bluetooth to my stupid car radio, it requires about 20 presses of several different buttons and holding your tongue in the right order, and then it all finally gets together, and maybe, just maybe, I can listen to the radio. Yeah.
And finally, one story that I think also points the way for the future and some concerns about the future. Back in 2008, there was a story about Bebo. They revealed a whole bunch of sensitive and secretive data on the web, and we've seen that even more recently.
Oh, thank God we've got that sorted in the future, isn't it?
LinkedIn and Last.fm with passwords. And this is an ongoing issue.
It is, and the more information they have, the more damage can be caused when this sort of information is released. Because we all tend to be a little bit lax about these things and use the same passwords over and over again, and potentially have the same information in the background. So it's something that is going to become a big problem in the future. But you'll be off the net. You won't care.
Will I?
Won't you?
Don't think so. I'm taking all my gadgets with me.
You're just stripping out the studio and off he goes. Yeah. Well, it'll be very interesting. So we'll carry on then, regardless, on the internet.
Oh yeah. So is it all right if I call you sometimes
3 o'clock in the morning
and want to talk about technology because no one else wants to talk about it?
With your in your phone box with your 2p coins and waiting for the pips to go.
Go on,
Can't
Paul.
wait.
Have you
Keep
seen
talking,
Have you
keep talking.
not seen the new Nokia phone? Come on, Paul.
Can you send me some bites, please? Oh, it'll be good.
Hey, wonderful. Thanks so much for joining in the technology conversation with me and indulging in my passion and obviously your passion as well.
6 years.
Over the
I
years
know.
on the wireless.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've loved it. Loved every minute. And
Hopefully the
look forward to doing
audience
it
has
again.
as well. But to be honest, you know, as long as
Who
I
knows?
enjoyed it.
Yeah. We only do it for ourselves, really. Don't we?
Exactly.
It's all good. It's all good.
Nice one. Hey, do stick around for a drink, Paul.
Absolutely.
Jason's in. Super Turtle are going to be playing live as well.
Now seeking out
Here's the Nomad.
perfect life forms. It would seem that Nomad is now seeking out perfect life forms. Perfect life forms. Perfect life forms.